Hey everybody, I've been having this conversation a lot lately and it felt like the universe was kind of telling me to make a video about it. So we interrupt your normally scheduled programming for this important announcement. You should be watching Critical Role. Hi, if we haven't met yet, I'm Ryan Doyle. This is the Verdigris Table, where I teach you how to play Dungeons & Dragons or become a better player or soon to be a better Dungeon Master. But if you have zero interest in learning about Dungeons & Dragons, you still might find that Critical Role is your new favorite thing. Imagine the epic fantasy and deep character development of Game of Thrones, but Critical Role can stick a landing, melded with the anything goes or anything can happen sort of reality show aspect, plus that wholesome charm of Great British Bake Off, with a dash of like, whose line is it anyway, mixed in there for some good improv comedy. Now, when I say it's a bunch of nerdy ass voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons, you might be thinking of a more calculation heavy version of Monopoly or Risk. But these aren't the mathletes, these are the theater kids. And even if you don't recognize any of their faces, I'd imagine that if you've watched a cartoon or an anime or played a video game in the last few decades, then you're going to recognize some of their voices. In fact, I bet that you have felt connected to one of the characters that they have breathed life into. And the voice actors might not get the same credit as screen actors, right? TV, film actors. You would be hard-pressed to find a more talented cast with better chemistry. These people are friends. They really love each other, and that shines through in every episode, creating a space for some really incredible performances and just producing a show with so much heart. That loving kindness filters through into the community of fans as well. And critters are some of the most warm and welcoming, just downright wholesome folks on the internet and wherever else you may find fans. And in contrast to a lot of communities, which shall go nameless, there's just some real incredibly good vibes in there. Not only that, there's some incredible artists producing all of this fan art in different mediums, which oftentimes gets incorporated into the show. It's a really cool space. But even if you're not interested in participating in a community or you don't recognize any of their past roles, even if nerdy, geeky stuff kind of isn't your cup of tea typically, I still think that you might get something really enjoyable out of Critical Role simply because it's a good show. The stories are epic, complex with twists and turns and surprises. The characters are incredibly well developed. And the world building, I would say, is second to none. Acknowledging that, Matt Mercer stands on the shoulders of giants, don't we all? It's an incredible setting. And like I said, it comes down to the performances. I did a little highlight review of the last two campaigns, getting ready for this video, and I laughed a lot and I cried a bunch, I'll admit. Because at the end of the day, this is a different kind of show, a different kind of art. Because they're playing D&D, which again is a game, but is really like a storytelling engine. Any of the characters can die at any moment pretty much. There is a real knife's edge mortality just filtering through the entirety of the show, making things way more tense when they're dramatic. What other show can you think of where every character is walking around with zero plot armor? Any episode, someone can die. That makes things so much more poignant. And it keeps things fresh and innovative as they're constantly responding not only to each other, but to the dice. They don't know what's going to happen next and are reacting in the moment, which makes it so much more realistic, which is a funny word to use for a fantasy game. But that's absolutely at the core of all of this. And these people are masters at improvisation. They're hilarious, they're moving. It's just, I could keep gushing about it, but I think you should just go give it a try. All right, let's say I've convinced you and you're at least interested in dipping your toes in the water of Critical Role. How do you go about doing that? One, again, I assure you, you don't need any knowledge of Dungeons & Dragons to enjoy this show. If you watch it for any length of time, you might become interested in learning D&D, in which case I'm here for you. The Verdigris Table here has been built to teach you Dungeons & Dragons and how to enjoy it better with your friends. But again, set that aside for now. You don't need any of that. If you go looking, you'll find that there are hundreds of episodes that are 3, 4, 6, 7 hours long in some cases, and it seems like an impossible task to catch up, to even begin watching this show. So where do you start? This video is going up on the day Campaign 3 begins, and I'm going to say that's the perfect place to start. It's not like season 3 of some show. It is a new campaign, which means it's new characters. They are actually on a different continent than the last series. It's set in the future in the same world. So yes, will there be some spoilers and plenty of jokes that go over your head? Yeah, probably, but it doesn't matter. You can still enjoy Campaign 3 and not really feel like you're missing much of anything. Another good place to start if you are one of those people who don't like to start a show that isn't finished, and in the era of binge watching, I get it. I know a lot of people like that. I would recommend considering beginning with Campaign 2, Episode 1. Again, it's a different time and place than Campaign 1. You're starting fresh with new characters, and I think, you know, the fact that they're starting fresh really opens the door for you. Now, you know, some of you are completists, and there's a lot of advice out there that will tell you, you know, start at the beginning, start at the first episode that was ever aired. And I'm going to say maybe don't do that. Controversial maybe, but the, you know, first episodes that went up, they actually started in the middle of their home game, right? So the characters have been going for a while, the game had been going for a while. They kind of just start in the middle, so it takes a little bit of time to kind of like catch up and figure out what's going on. The other argument for not starting with those first episodes of Campaign 1 is that the production value is much lower than what they've achieved today. And I'm not casting stones. My production values have nowhere to go but up. So yeah, no judgments there. But I think that there's some great stuff in Campaign 1, the Chroma Conclave and Vecna. There's some brilliant stuff in there, and I think, you know, if you get into Critical Role, you might really enjoy going back to watch it. But as a starting point, I think you're better off looking to the beginning of Campaign 3 or the beginning of Campaign 2. The campaigns themselves can be broken up into arcs. So if you're looking for other on-ramps into the show, there's quite a few wikis, subreddits, there's places to go that can provide you with like those breakdowns. But again, I think it's good to start at the beginning. Critical Role premieres on Thursday nights at 7 Pacific time. And you can watch the videos on demand if you subscribe to their Twitch channel. Otherwise, they land on YouTube the Monday following. The Wednesday following, there's also a podcast version that goes out, and I've consumed a lot of Critical Role commuting or whatever, cleaning my house, doing some like menial tasks. I'm a podcast guy. I enjoy it, but I will often find I will pause the podcast at these like crucial moments because you do lose something. You don't see one. I mean, the incredible, you know, sets, the battle terrain, the maps that Matthew Mercer produces are incredible, and the minis, and it's really cool. But the other thing that you don't get on the podcast is the actors' faces, which, you know, is doing a lot. I know they're voice actors, which is why it carries so well as a podcast. But again, I have often paused the podcast until whatever I'm eating lunch or that night at home, I can actually watch the show. I'm just going to insert here for people who are watching Campaign 1 or Campaign 2 right now. You know, there's a big question. Should you make the leap to Campaign 3? And, you know, that's a personal choice. My brother-in-law is in the midst of Campaign 2. He just started recently because I have been trying to convince everybody ever to watch this show. So he asked me, should he start watching Campaign 3, Episode 1? And honestly, my first impulse is like, yeah, get on the train, because then you can participate in the forums, right? Then you can actually have these conversations with people. And please, if you start watching the show, come back, come to the comments. Let's talk about it, because it's the best, and I'll talk about it all day. But I asked my brother-in-law what episode was he on, and he was on Campaign 2's Campaign 2's episode 25. So I advised him to watch episode 26 at least, Because again, like I said, there are these like campaign arcs, and episode 26 is the ending of one, arguably really the beginning of another. And I know he hasn't watched episode 26 yet because my phone hasn't exploded with texts. But personal choice, I would recommend jumping onto campaign 3 and maybe filling in on campaign 2 as you have the time. Now, I will say for campaign 2, and I imagine for campaign 3, and come to think of it, a lot of the shows, honestly, that are my favorite shows, it takes a while for the characters to kind of find their footing and mesh. One, in this case, it takes a little bit for the players to like fully realize their characters. But two, those like interactions and callbacks take a minute to get going. So give yourself a couple episodes wherever you're jumping in. If it's like the early episodes of the campaign, give them a little time to find their footing. But yeah, please do yourself a favor. Go watch or listen to Critical Role, whatever episodes you find yourself drawn to. And then, yeah, like I said, please come back and let's talk about them. Now, the purpose of this channel is to help beginners learn D&D and to help experienced players become better at D&D. And as such, I feel like I kind of have a responsibility to talk about the Mercer effect. Matthew Mercer is an incredible dungeon master and just seems like a genuinely good dude. And I am indebted of gratitude. One is an inspiration in my home games and in this channel, but also as someone who's just brought a ton of joy into my life. With the rest of the cast of Critical Role, there's no weak links in that chain. Everybody's got their favorites, but those people are all gems. But Critical Role is a shining light on top of the hill, and every light casts a shadow. So the Mercer effect is real, and in the next video I'm going to talk about it. Until then, get out there, have fun, be kind to each other. Remember that we love you very much, and is it Thursday yet? There are primers and recaps and wikis and plenty of stuff to prime yourself if you're interested, but you